the worm was right above his head, and the antenna snapped and sparks flew off. And the worm said, "Hey kid, I like your style. I love it when you get up in your parents' face and scream no. I love it when you march through the house slamming doors. I love it when you cheat at school. I love it when you're so angry and so stressed you feel like a tomato about to explode."
To help a couple of people change their lives for the better is a good deed. To help hundreds of people change their lives for the better is a great contribution to society. One extraordinary man has bettered the lives of tens of thousands of people over a period of 45 years. It is indeed an achievement to be celebrated.
Everybody likes a good story, and I'm a storyteller, and I just tell stories that are embedded in those stories are lessons in life.
He came into my life at a pretty radical time. Like I was 12 years old, and I decided that I'd had enough of life, I guess.
If it wasn't for the fact that I reached out to Ron again, asked Ron for help, asked him to be my mate and hold my hand and step me through life again, I could well not be here right now.
Probably people who are in the mental health industry may look at a storyteller as someone who, they don't give him the time of day because it doesn't sound clinical enough.
He's passionate, he's talented, he's committed to making a difference.
The reality is I'm an old man, and I'm tired. And I would continue this role, I would just continue if I could. But I'm ill, and I have to address my illness. And I have a stage 4 diagnosis of a very serious sort of illness that you'd recognize, and you go, "Oh man, uh-oh."
The thousands of lives he has touched. I don't want to say that while I'm crying, I'm going to try again. One is the thousands of lives he has touched. All of those young people that he has seen at schools and at the clinic and with their families. So that is an everlasting legacy, really.
I worked with Brett Summerly down at Pongray Base Hospital, and a therapist called me and said, "I've got the most amazing story to tell you." And he said this kid was dying of anorexia and was in the final stages. And he picked up your book, and the next day he's on a different flight in terms of what he's saying, and said, "You got to come down here and see this kid."
Ron's book sort of popped into my life, and I remember they'd been trying to get me to eat, and I was whatever, and I hadn't been cooperative, and they were saying, like, "All right, well, if you don't by this time on this day, we've got to put this drip in you through my nose and down my throat," I think it was. And I was like, "All right, well, bring it on." And anyway, I was just, you can imagine like a 12-year-old boy that hasn't eaten for a long time. I wasn't in the most amazing shape. And anyway, so that day came, and I was kicking and screaming, and they put the thing in, and during that process I passed out, and I think when I woke up, I'd had just enough sort of sustenance go through the tube to kick the brain back into gear, and I kind of came to, and I didn't want to leave the world anymore.
I'm glad you recognize that, though. Really, yeah.
Were you the only that played that as well? You opened that?
No. I was there when they played his one. We built this group around him, and then he just took off and went from strength to strength to strength. Brett?
Just overnight stuff. People just say to me,
It was pretty genuine, huh?
I was creating my own little story using characters that I related to the book, I guess. I was sort of switching out wolves for other things and different creatures, but it was all 100% based on my take on his story. I was using it as the sort of framework to tell my story. Yeah, even to the drawing styles, I think I was copying the guy's art. And to this day, it's probably still part of my style of drawing.
Brett taught me that, hey, it's not me, it's the messages of this journey that are the real healing lessons. I'm going to give you something worth more than gold. At the end of the journey, there will be some of you that will be in control of your own life. You'll be author of your own book. And I have a theme throughout my journey. You make good choices, you're going to see the world. You make lousy choices, you're going to get stuck in South Auckland. And if you get stuck in South Auckland, your novel of your life is going to be a pretty boring short story. Not that South Auckland's bad. I live in South Auckland. I dig South Auckland. But you boys need to get out there and see the world. And this is your way to do it. I'm just going to tell you a story. Bored, just grinding his teeth, muttering to himself, stepping on flowers, walking through one yard after another. And there's a hose stretched across the yard. And he went down, not missing a stride, picked up the hose, walked till it became taut, gave it a jerk, tossed it out in front of him.
I've watched Ron in the classroom, and the kids are just absolutely rapt. He's like, you could hear a pin drop. He's a magician.
I've been at the coalface of mental health since 1976, and I see dysfunction, I see disorder, I see confusion and pain. But I also see that there's great opportunity to actually start teaching our kids how to live. I've lived in New Zealand for 28 years, and the Maoris have a saying, they say, and it's whakatika, which means arise, stand up, start your journey. I was born in Bakersfield, California. My parents were from Oklahoma, and Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath would really be a book about my people. We came to California, to a place called Pacifica. It was just this idyllic place to grow up, 13 miles south of San Francisco, and the oceans and the foothills. When I was 8, which would have been in 1955, boy, 1955, my sister developed leukemia. And we went through a year's dying process, and it absolutely shattered my parents. And I was left to my own devices a lot. And I was just all over the place having experiences and things. But it gave me a sense of anger and a not fairness, and it had some influence in my life. Psychologically, it was a disruptive time for her and my dad. But anyway, when she started coming out of it, which she did, which was several years later, she started taking in foster children. And I have no regrets from sharing my house, other than my parents never learned the concept that when you have 6 kids at the dinner table, 1 chicken doesn't get it. So there's a lot of competition. And so I learned the dynamics, the pain, and just the needs that foster kids have, and the longing to belong, the longing, just wanting a place. And that prompted later on my work with Society's Children.
He was a recreational director at a children's home. You could see how much he had compassion and concern for the kids, and I just saw that as a real plus as far as knowing that I wanted to have children, and he would be a really good dad. And he would sometimes tell the kids stories, even then, I think, just to amuse them.
So I'd grown up with your stories as a little girl. I would beg for you to tell me those stories. They were incredible. And they had these turns and twists, and they're amazing.
And the boy started climbing up the quills. It was like climbing up a ladder that's on an angle. And he got right up to the top, stepped across, got himself down under the feathers, stuck his head up, and choom, off they went. And the next thing Rigo said is, we're flying through time and space, and you're going to get sleepy. And the boy thought, man, that's odd, because I just woke up. I danced on the edge of rebellion through university and things. I was in the 60s, and I was just a big part of the 60s out there. And then I had a really wonderful experience when I was in Auburn, California. And I gave my life to Christ at that point. And my walk has been ever since that time. For the next few years, I taught. And I was a special education teacher. And I had an experience working in a residential treatment facility up in the mountains of California. And it was like a school for scoundrels. The kids would come into this idyllic setting, and they would get more sophisticated in their deviancy.
A lot of the children were in care homes because of their behavior problems that they, were, or problems at home that wasn't making it where they could stay in their own home. And we just had a real burden for these children.
There were a couple of deaths of kids at that residential treatment home up in the mountains. And my wife and I in 1975 said, hey, we should do something about this. And taking the concept of special education, of every one of those kids are unique, let's develop a program for them. And so we were able to open up in 1975 a group home for one child. And then we did such a good job with that. We developed a professional staff around ourselves, and we called our organizations Creative Alternatives.
Pretty soon, they had all family members come in and join in, and then they became foster parents. Friends became foster parents. Everybody joined in to make a difference in a child's life.
A lot of us kids didn't have the experience of seeing what a normal mother and a normal father and loving parents, that example. We didn't have that growing up. So, and to be welcomed into your home with your children and seeing that was just, in hindsight, looking back on it, it's just priceless.
Their prognosis coming into placement at Creative Alternatives was homelessness, incarceration, or long-term consumer mental health and substance abuse. I mean, that was what they knew.
If I wasn't living with Ron and Mary, I'd be dead. For sure about that. Or in prison.
I grew up in a home like what these children come from. But in the time I was growing up, everything was behind closed doors. And that's just the way it was. There was no help. You just suffered through it.
How long did you fend for yourself? From what age to what age? Were you just pretty much on your own?
Probably from when I was born, pretty much.
It wasn't just about an organization. It was about the foundation of family. And that was what Ron and Mary based the organization on.
It was kind of a multi-generational transmission of craziness. Kids who had kids that had kids. And so some of these kids we were working with, their grandparents were in their early 30s. And the levels of dysfunction, there was nobody in their family systems that could teach these kids how to live their life.
One of the clients had broken like 10, 15 windows in a period of like 2 weeks of his placement. And I came to you and said, Ron, I think we need to terminate this client because he keeps on breaking windows. And you said, Darren, windows are cheap. We can replace the windows. We can't replace lives.
They're not lashing out at you. They're not cussing at you. They are lashing out at those that were supposed to protect them that didn't.
The emotion of anger needed to be dealt with, their mind and the confusion in their mind. And they were just dysregulated. That's the term of the day. I mean, their emotions were all over the place. And it just screamed that, hey, that needs attention.
So they started Renfranca School, named after Mary's father. And it was the most wonderful thing that could have ever happened. Pretty soon, different counties in the whole state of California were hearing about this amazing company that was helping children not only in placement, group home, foster family, but also in education. We had it all.
And I had the latest training, and I tried to run groups on what I just learned, and they didn't work. The last thing in the world these kids want to do when I put them together was stay there. They wanted out. And see, these kids operated on the fight or flight response. If something gave them any stress, they wanted to haul or they wanted to just get really aggressive. So my groups to start off with, after I got my master's degree, were terrible. I was the bait and the kids were the sharks. And it would just get, and it was like the worst experiences of my life weekly. I mean, we homogeneously put these groups together, but they didn't work. And so I started telling a story, and I immediately noticed, because of the lack of tension in the room, that the moment I started telling a story, these kids listened to learn. Then that evening, I started thinking, this is lousy, I'm starving. I thought, I'll throw that brooch away again, this time I will. And I took that brooch out, and it was just a cheap thing. I didn't even want it.
It opened a window, starting with children who, in other settings, couldn't confront issues, to be able to make change. But through this vehicle of storytelling and the groups and being able to look at things outside themselves, there was real potential there for them being able to then feel comfortable to move into that uncomfortable territory of making change and risking, taking the risk.
Storytelling is age old. Storytelling is how one generation passed the good stuff that they had and the important ways of doing things on to the next generation. It was often done around a campfire. And my experience with around the campfire is we just implemented that in with the kids at Creative Alternatives. At the close of the journey, the last session, we would take them to my house, and I lived on the Tuolumne River, and we'd go down on the Tuolumne River and we'd build a nice campfire, and the kids would come in and we'd tell the last story. And we'd kind of develop the tradition of around the campfire. And my post-story discussions are all geared like a around the campfire experience. Are you in the habit of being angry? Is that a good habit to be in? Do you remember the model? Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry. This is the stand-alone time. This is the time that's the most important time of your life. Quick to listen, you're breathing deep. You're not lighting up like a Christmas tree. You're breathing deep, and you're figuring out.
Out of the oral storytelling, developing the books. And so I was involved in quite a lot of the editing with that, trying to keep the story as much oral written as you could and not losing the Ronese in it.
I thought, here I have a medium, a modality where I can teach these kids how to live their life, how to take control of their life, how to live an effective life, how to be the author of a wonderful book. There's this unnamed boy who enters into this metaphorical land of confusion, and each issue he encounters is an issue in life. And he's tumbling out of control when he starts this journey. And at the end of the journey, he's standing alone. He can declare to himself and to others, this is who I am. I've established a sense of identity, who I am and who I will be and how I'm going to live my life. At Creative Alternatives, things were going great. And then all of a sudden, a news season came in. And this news season, within the next couple of years, Mary and I were swept out of our own organization like lint out the back door. It was like, whoa, what just happened? I can remember one of the final days that I was in California. I went to a mate's house, one of my colleagues, and my loss was so great that I cried and I cried. I cried for a couple hours in this guy's living room. I sobbed over my loss. But then pulled together and I brought my family. And we wanted to get away. We had to get away. So we came to New Zealand, and we didn't know a soul in New Zealand.
We got very excited about New Zealand as a country and a place to live and a place, that we thought our children would enjoy growing up. And really felt like that what Ron had to offer was something that could be used in New Zealand.
I came to New Zealand with baggage. I was angry, I was upset, I was hard done. My life work was just unscrupulously taken from us. And I didn't recognize it. It was clever. All the thing was clever. But in retrospect, I am so thankful of the grand design of actually moving over and starting afresh and well, I got to know my family.
We have 3 daughters. We'd had a lot of foster sons as well, but they were all grown up and kind of settled in their own lives. And so when we left, it was the girls. Aurora was 15 and Melissa was 9 and Haley, the youngest, 2.
All of them wanted to be doing something different at the same time, but we came to New Zealand and my oldest one thought, geez, my parents are brain dead.
I had no idea even where New Zealand was. I didn't know if they, do they speak English? Is it, civilized? It's an island somewhere, and you flip that. I can remember, going and finding a globe at school and flipping it around, and it was this like tiny little island in the middle of nowhere. And I went, are they out of their minds?
A few days before we came to New Zealand, I thought, you know what? I ought to do a little bit of research on this. So I started calling, and in about 4 phone calls, I was talking directly to the director of special education for New Zealand, the whole country. He said, oh, when you come into town, come down and see me, and we'll see what we can do. So the second day we were in New Zealand, we drove down to Wellington, and he said, where do you want to work? And so we said, hey, let's go to the Bay of Islands. And so we drove to the Bay of Islands, and we drove into Paihia and got a look at the Bay of Islands, and we go, we're home, man. That's where we stayed.
We lived on a big property. It was beautiful. I was always outdoors, picking wildflowers, climbing trees. And a really fond memory was being on the ride-on mower with my dad. I thought that was awesome.
I met Ron Phillips, and he had his program, Gem of the First Water, which was a storytelling, a narrative process. And of course, in Māori culture, storytelling is just part of it. And so we used his program to move through all those communities, and we had some great results.
And so right off the bat, I come to New Zealand, and I'm starting to run my groups and tell my story. And that grew and that grew. Went out to the breakfast table, and there his parents were reading the paper. Big smile came to his face. I found no difficulty making the transition from working with kids out of Oakland and downtown San Francisco than I did from working with kids in Kerikeri and in Northland and Kaikoui. We all have a need to belong. We all need to have a need for freedom, a need for having fun in our life and future in our life. The needs are the same. The issues were the same. After a bit, Dad put his newspaper down, and the boy Rockford, and by the way, young travelers, he never took his eyes off the cereal. That attitude never left his face as his dad leaned and said, look, I told you 3 days in a row to get that backyard mowed today. I want it mowed today. Do you understand me?
In many ways, when you tell a story, it crystallizes your reality. So the chance to actually talk about things that are understood and tell a story, and really he brings that interaction about. It's a discovery process for those young people. It's a discovery process for all of us.
Now, what kind of relationship did he have with his parents? When he was looking down at the cereal and he was smirking, do you think his mocking his dad was irritating his dad and winding his dad up? Totally. Was the dad getting a little bit more upset? When he was looking down at the cereal, what was he saying in his mind, do you think? Oh, sure, Dad, I'm going to get the lawns mowed this morning. Do you think he was saying that? No way. Do you think he intended on mowing the lawns? I told stories all over Northland. I lived on Te Ahu Ahu Road, which was a couple of miles from Kerikeri, and my car would break down, and I'd have to walk down to the highway and hitchhike to Kerikeri. And just all kinds of times, a carload of Maoris going north would stop, and a lot of them would say, hey man, you're the storyteller. And I said, yeah, I sure am. I love telling stories. And they said, well, we love stories.
I saw the book. It was I hung out with a lot of hippies, and the book was always in their house. And I thought, I wonder what this is. And you just heard the positive work Ron was doing with the kids up north.
And then my oldest daughter got a job down in Auckland, and she was having a drama about every week, and so we ended up moving to Auckland, and that's when I started working at Middlemore Hospital.
The clinic's in Otahuhu in South Auckland. It's a public health service. It's part of the Middlemore Hospital services, providing services for young people through the whole South Auckland region, which is a region of lower socioeconomic status. A lot of Māori, a lot of Pacific Island families, a lot of Asian families as well. So quite a diverse and relatively struggling group of people for whom teenage years can be pretty rough.
He's chosen to work in the part of Auckland which is the most multicultural, which has the most social issues, where kids were coming, sometimes from backgrounds where you're having to just swim a bit upstream in order to get what you need out of life.
The fox just said, come on, tell me, no, I'm going to stretch my legs, and he stretched.
The thing about Ron is that he really loves teenagers. And it's not because he doesn't recognise how difficult they can be, but he just sees what is there to be seen, what the potential is in teenagers, especially those teenagers who are doing their very best to hide that potential because they've been let down, because they don't want to have another go at trusting someone and being let down.
Telling a stranger about your innermost thoughts, fears, and maybe ambitions is okay, but it's very challenging, even for adults. So this technique of using storytelling to allow people to explore some of those things, I think is a way less confronting and a much easier way to start to engage.
At the time, the kind of therapy streams that were evidence-based and the most used were family therapy and cognitive behavioural therapy, but running a narrative group therapy where you were providing the narrative, as it were, but then inviting people to talk about what was happening to the boy in the story, but then essentially mapping their lives onto that, but not having to say so. It's a really safe way for people to talk about the things that they were really upset about or meant a lot to them, but without having to put their hand up and say, this is me.
I probably didn't enjoy initially going and seeing Ron. What teenager likes their parent taking them along to see a counsellor to talk about issues and talk about their life? But that's not what you do with Ron. When you sit down with Ron as a teenager, he works out what you need, he works out what your interests are, he manages to tailor his stories and his life lessons to what you need and what you care about.
One thing that Ron has done is tried to come up with a whole of life approach, which is rather than just thinking about a technique, he's trying to think about, well, where are you at in your life stage and what is important for you to achieve now?
They don't have to do anything but listen. And then he invites them to contribute. And they don't have to, as he says, I don't want you, you can pass, but you can't bullshit.
I don't know how we managed to break through, because I was one of those teenagers that just had all the barriers up and wasn't prepared to let anyone through, was keeping everything to myself. But Ron's just got this amazing ability to connect with a child, manage to tell stories and talk about issues and talk about life in a way that just really I could understand.
He'd come in and just drop a little gem into the water, so people had something to take home with them, really. And a little story or vignette that's easy to remember, that has an image associated with it, that people can go, right, I know why I've come here and I know why I'm coming back.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
Good, good.
Nice
how you doing? I still go around here, and sometimes I feel like a rock star with the kids that were in my group because they dug it.
The kids would come back. Last year I had 2 boys who were in my class who went to see you, and every time they'd come back they had positive things to say.
This is Ron. I'm not sure if many of you or any of you have met him, Ron Phillips. He's the writer of this book that you're going to be working with and the creator of this program.
Through the course of this systematic journey, we put on the table by telling the story and then creating a discussion, a guided discussion after the story, we help kids configure their own life.
Before I was doing the group with Ron, I was going on a path that I knew if I continued, it wasn't gonna work out the way I wanted it to. It just sort of helped me to understand that I needed to change. I sort of went home and they were already noticing that I was changing. And I just said, this guy Ron is coming and he's been talking to us and he's just been helping me become a better person than I was before and just have more respect for people. Yeah, I don't know how to explain, just becoming better than what I was before the journey.
The 8 elements of self are anger, the mind, the heart, the dance, the mountains of our life, the decisions and choices, the cactus, and the style of living. And the journey teaches each one of those.
The fact that boys have that opportunity to express their feelings, their emotions, and put themselves both in and outside those feelings and looking, self-reflection. I think confidence is one of the things that we see in the young men, and probably their overall well-being. The fact that they've had that opportunity to talk with someone, to express how they feel, once again, in that safe environment. And I think that satisfaction is what the difference you see in them.
We finished 2 weeks ago, and I thought that was going to be our gig. But then you gave me this note, a rather big note. And I remember I didn't read it in your presence. I took it out to my car, and I read it. And I went, wow, what impact the journey had. Would you agree that it was an enjoyable experience?
Yeah. Yes.
I enjoyed it. I thought you guys were absolutely terrific. Israel wrote, "Thank you so much, Ron, for helping change the boys and I for the better. This has honestly changed the way I think of the things in different types of situations. I promise you that I will never commit suicide or become an alcoholic. Thank you again for taking us on this unforgettable journey." So you made a commitment.
I'm gonna get out of South Auckland, travel the world.
Travel the world. And to do that, what kind of choices and decisions do you need to make?
I need to stop doing the bad habits.
I believe that. I've been running this since last century. But you guys make it all worthwhile. You guys make me a rich, rich man. And I thank you for that.
Some of the most powerful moments working with Ron, I think, have been in for families in crisis where, kids have made a serious attempt on their lives and families don't know what to do.
When I was a kid, it was like, hey, I'm going to run away. And now it's like, hey, I'm going to cat myself. And having worked with so many suicidal kids, I'm able to firsthand talk to these young travelers about the mistake it would be, a permanent solution to a very temporary problem. Because these suicidal kids that I've worked with in the past, 3 months down the track, they're going, oh my God, how could I even have considered, what a stupid, silly thing to do. And so having the experience, it gives me kind of a authority to talk to them regarding that. And we've had profound discussions in here on the importance of going through those stuck periods, not doubting in the dark what you know to be true in the light. And all of you are going to experience a time when you feel like, oh, suicide is an option, but it's the worst, lousiest option.
Parliament's a difficult situation. It's a challenging place. It's all-consuming. And if the wheels start to fall off in your personal life and from a health perspective, it can really have an impact on your job. I wasn't emotionally well, and I was having bouts of breaking down privately, and crying, and didn't want to be here anymore. I'd lost my self-worth. I no longer understood my reason for being. And then I remembered this great guy, this tall American with all these stories who I used to sit and chat with when I was a teenager. And so I went and found Ron's email address. I sent him a message, basically a cry for help. Hey, I'm not doing so well anymore. Do you remember me? Can I see you again? I think I need some support. And Ron, to his credit, after what was probably more than a decade and a half, still replied and still called me young traveller. Things were extremely difficult for me, but I'm probably still here because I reached out to Ron again, got help from Ron and another friend of his, and they pretty much saved my life.
Suicide is a real big issue in our society today. And so we've had a lot of discussions on, you're going to feel like it, especially if you've been squeezed or you've been bullied or you've been pushed around or a lot of lousy things have happened. And Israel shared this poem with me because we all get into situations like this. The boy was on the bus to school when another kid was acting cool. He kicked the boy, he pushed and he shoved. He only felt pain when he wanted love. The whole day through school, he sat and he cried. He could not even smile. If he had tried, he wanted to smile, but he could not lie, 'cause deep down inside, he wanted to die. I was working with these suicidal kids, and 60 Minutes, the TV program, became interested in my work, and they did a segment. And the segment is called Survival Skills, Survival Stories. And it was my work with these suicidal kids at Middlemore Hospital. And a whole bunch of New Zealanders saw that program. And there was a lot of interest, hey, let's get this here. And so I thought, well, you know what? My work is really going to take off now. But all during that same time, at that very same time, this wet blanket of mental health came down on my work, and from very on high, saying, it's not evidence-based, it's not best practice, it's a silly little process, it's a gimmick sort of thing. And so the industry put a squelch to any possibility of it taking off.
He was doing this amazing work, and we needed to try and show that it was effective in an academic sense. And so we've been working with Ron, I don't know how many years now, trying to get funding to actually get the money so that we could do the rigorous research to prove what he was doing was effective.
Hey lady, I'm hungry, what do you got to eat? Well, my husband's a woodcutter and I don't want to wait till your husband comes home, lady, I'm hungry now.
It goes across a number of ministries, so obviously education will be interested because one of the benefits would be improved school engagement and better school retention and results from the education system. But it also has obviously health benefits like less mental health concerns, less suicidality, those sorts of things. But then it also ticks justice boxes, yes, less young people getting in trouble with the law. And then wider social policies, more young people engaged in future education and therefore in jobs means less. So it cuts across all those different things. And that sometimes also makes it harder to fund because it doesn't neatly fit within one little box. And so that's another challenge that we have.
Simon did. He started seeing what I was doing, and he set up this research project that is a full-blown research where we went into Pukekohe Intermediate. Our entire senior school are participating in the project. So I have 8 classrooms that are part of the project and 8 classrooms that are in the control groups.
Really, it wouldn't cost a lot of money, even on a larger scale. It would probably be tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, but not millions of dollars. But when you think of, again, the amount of money that this could save if it is effective and it was run out, it's really nothing.
I've run other whole classroom groups and did my own ode to research, which was 5 questions. Did this program inspire you to become your best self? Was it really good? Was it just okay? Was it lousy? Did it really, really suck? And of the kids I ran full groups with, almost all of them it was really inspiring or it was really good, and the comments were off the charts, brochure quality. So I know the stuff impacts people. It gets into the psychology. And once you get into the psychology of a listener, it's there.
We want to do it in a very rigorous way with the randomised design, which is hard to do in a school community with all the requirements that the students have around their education. You know, we're asking the schools to do quite a lot.
The boy turned and looked into the great hall. 3 tiers of wise men and women, shoulder to shoulder, a rugby field long, diamond floor, and the source of all good decisions was at the end of the hall on this huge golden throne, part man, part bird, part animal.
The kids have actually made some word art similar to the ones up there about what they were thankful for. So some of them might like to show you those. They're up on my table.
There are 8 teachers that are involved at this point, and all of them seem pretty enthusiastic, but I would be thrilled if half of them decided to really make this resource theirs and start using it on a regular basis.
Yeah, I definitely can see a change, and thinking going on before acting is probably the biggest thing for a child that I would say probably did not do that before.
I've noticed in my class a lot of students who would normally sit back and not put themselves forward are actually those students who are now.
Having the boy, they actually do see themselves in him, and so when he's coming to these realisations about where his anger's coming from, or, you know, treating others how he'd like to be treated, they're actually coming to the same realisation at the same time. I know for my class it was the workbook where we had to write all the negative things about the boy, and then you had to say the negative things about yourself, and a lot of them kind of went, oh yeah.
When we worked with our little select group, they would also often talk about their uncle or their brother or someone just a bit removed from them that was going through the issues of the boy in the book. But really it was themselves. But they would just take it that little bit further out because it made them feel a bit safer maybe about being able to share.
Because I didn't have the time myself to put into preparing, the sort of turning up at the lesson and going, oh, what are we doing? But now, for the last couple of sessions, it's been a lot easier to talk to the kids about it and feel like I really know what's happening as well. So I'd feel a lot more comfortable taking it on now, and I think it's working well.
This stuff is begging to be extended and put into other areas of curriculum, into your literacy, into your art, into your drama. And that would be a fantastic.
A number of teachers have had their eyes opened and are seeing direct links between kids in their class and the messages in Gem of the First Water and Ron's personality and change they're seeing in the child.
This research project has some legs, and there'll be a lot of people interested in the outcomes. And I just think the outcomes are going to be like the outcomes I usually or always have. Good to great. We didn't prove anything. There were no results. But I think there were some reasons for it. The kids dug it. And I think there were a lot of seeds planted, but it got squeezed into the teachers' other curriculums, and there wasn't room for it. And it's like seeds that get planted that don't get watered. And so I learned something. And what I learned is I'm not interested in my work going into environments where it's just an add-on, a tag-on.
I don't have a problem with the idea of ideas having to compete. I mean, as long as the best ideas float to the surface that way. And that's that's what's been disappointing, because I think Ron's work has got ideas that are better than many of the much more widespread therapies.
Sometimes it's about just being in the right place at the right place and having the right connections, and maybe those things haven't fallen as Ron would hope, but I don't think that's to detract from, as I say, the hundreds if not thousands of people where he has made a real difference.
People that run academic psychiatry and academic psychology tend to have their own favoured ways of looking at things, and so they promote those, and that naturally involves tending to either ignore or suppress other ideas.
Ron's never really rode the waves of what's the fashionable therapy. Ron's developed something he believes and he's committed to and has delivered it, and if nothing else, he's shown that he's an ardent believer in making a difference using what he knows.
And he turned to the cactus, took a deep breath. He had no options because those wolves would have torn him apart on the floor. And he leaped up onto the cactus, and he had to climb the cactus the way a bear climbs a tree. Needles just covered the left side of his face. In fact, there was even needles in the white of his eyes. And he let out another scream and another scream as he pulled himself up, and tears started coming. And the right side of his face was swelling. It was just dripping down, and big globs of tear would drip onto his. And he looked at Fox and he said, "I'm sorry." Fox is probably about where Brody is out on the. I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I'm sorry." And the Fox looked at him and said, "Of course you're sorry, but being sorry isn't going to change anything. This isn't fair. It was your choice."
Many good therapies never make it. You've got to get sponsored. You've got to get to the right conferences. You've got to be funded well enough to get on, get into the marketplace.
We prescribe medication freely, and all of that, all medication has side effects. So, this is something that doesn't have, in my view anyway, a lot of downside. It might not be for everyone, so not everybody will complete it, not everybody will want to do it, but it doesn't have a lot of, if you like, potential negative impacts on people.
Hey, what did the Fox say this part of the journey was supposed to be like?
The easiest part.
The easiest. You mean to tell me that he missed out on an easy part because he didn't feel like going that way? Do you guys ever end up getting in trouble and then missing out on some really good things because things came your way?
Yeah. He probably felt sidelined and unrecognised. And I would say it's taken nearly his entire career for his work to begin to be recognised in the eyes of others.
The most amazing thing to me is the fact that 42 years later, Creative Alternatives is thriving, using many of the same systems, many of the same, just essentially the model that we set forward 42 years ago.
I think even the new employees would buy into the mission that Ron and Mary Phillips started, and that's seen across the entire employment here, that the people are just in love with what we do and how we do it because of Ron and Mary Phillips' initial dream.
I think it's pretty doggone awesome that what we started with an idea in our head has grown to the stage that it is today. And today they work with all kinds of children from all over California. They have a large staff and they're continuing to do good.
There is a solid group of people who have been there 20, 25, 30 years. And I think that says a lot about who Creative Alternatives is as an agency, and the belief that people have in the work that Creative Alternatives does.
It started off as a family, the foundation was a family, and we want to continue that because that's what's really made a difference in these children's lives.
I want them to have memories, good memories. They have so many bad memories that, and I think all that plays a part of it, of participating in making your own meals and the smell of coming home to something cooking and, you know, going out and socializing together. You know, that's what we're here to do, is to teach them that too.
A lot of times some of your practices, Ron, was unorthodox. But I think that's what makes creative alternatives, where because it was different and you approached it different, you got those kids to believe in you. And they looked forward to seeing you. I can remember the clients I had in the house, sometimes they would say that they're in trouble. Well, I want to see Ron. I want to see Ron. And I don't know what words you said, but they would come out of there and they'd be like debriefed, where they weren't angry and wanting to hurt other people or themselves.
You had a way with them and everybody just adored you, and you had, but you know, a lot of your energy was invested with all of those kids and also with the staff, you know.
It wasn't my plan to make creative alternatives my career. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was 21. The thing that kept me at creative alternatives was every time a kid moved out, another kid moved in.
Oh, you're done. Leave them where they're at. You put the sauce on. They're doing just fine. You put the sauce on too early. No, they're not. They're about done. I guarantee you.
Brian.
What? Which one? Which one?
That's a great picture.
Did a little bit of fishing down at the river. Yeah, it was just a kid on a farm and with a riverfront property. It was great.
You would get your feet wet every day, your boots were soaked, and your socks. You would take your boots off outside, but then you'd walk through the house and we could smell every step you took.
I try to tell them, you know, these are the memories you're going to want to have when you have your own family. You know, all these things we do for you, you're going to look back on them. You don't know that now, but it'll be important to show your own kids.
Do you think it helped you in raising your boy?
Yeah.
In what sort of ways?
The same way how you guys raised me.
It was like the truck you gave Brian, or sold Brian, the long bed Chevy.
What did I ever sell?
What? You got a car too? Why was he the favorite son? I didn't get shit. I didn't get shit.
You got the best of everything I had to offer.
Is that what I got? The chicken? Okay.
Where was the first group home? Was it in your home?
Yeah, I was in our bedroom, and then we grew out of the bedroom. In fact, we were foster parents from almost day one. Mm-hmm. And one of my foster sons came and moved into the old office, and one of our maintenance man built us a little office in the back.
I remember that office, and I remember going there, and it was just such a vibrant environment. And looking back on it, you guys were you in your early 30s, late 20s?
Late 20s, early 30s, yeah. You hit that? And it was such a blast to go to the Renfrenka School today, where there's 100 kids in placement, and they're coming not from just creative alternatives, they're being placed by counties all over the place because the schooling is just so good. It's big, but the philosophy and the culture remains very much like it was when we got it going. And it forms really the foundation for the gym journey, because that was where I developed it. I developed the therapeutic storytelling process, the storytelling process, and much of the around the campfire discussions were developed right there with the group of guys that I started it with. Dan, you inspired me by writing the stories down and by your creative influence. And, you know, for example, in the Canyon of Sadness, I had them, the story was the giant and giantesses were crying and their tears were rolling down and creating turmoil in the canyon and the waters. And you said, no, Ron, I think it would be better if we put those giants on thrones. And it was just a master ploy. All the poetry, and you just were, you know, brilliant, and you were inspiring to me. You helped me believe in what we were doing. And John, your artwork, you just absolutely made the thing come alive. I mean, Ray John and the Commodore of Lies, that's who they are. The archetypes of anger, lies, projection, or blame, right there. And we created it just in this little group here.
You had developed your stories, and John had, you know, started to illustrate the stories, And I think Dan had started to sort of edit the stories and it was becoming a reality. And the stories were starting to be transcribed into a book. And that was the first part of it.
But you know, the impact that the gym had on so many kids wasn't just a short-term impact. We've got kids that are now in their 30s and 40s who have come back to us and said, how can I get my hands on a copy of Jim of the First Water?
I don't think at the time we realized exactly what we were doing, but what we ended up doing is pretty remarkable.
Looking back on the seeds that you planted and coming back now in 2018, what do you see? What do you
I see a mature organization full of good and hope and motivation to do good and continue it and keep the level of care and just going on. I just believe that a creative alternative has been sustainable and is sustainable.
You started something that will never end. And that's why I wanted to include you on in my brochure.
I'm so thankful.
Yeah, that people will know where it started. And even though it is a corporation, it's still a family with a purpose.
In season and out of season.
Yeah.
I've told my story. In fact, I've told my story so much that I'll be ready for other people to tell it.
Yeah.
That was really a good trip for Ron. And it was, as it worked out with Aurora helping, it was really lovely for her too, because it gave her reconnection with what had gone on there when she was just a child. And, you know, and then that was really nice to see the development and then the people that, you know, she'd known and how things had changed there.
I left humbly back in 1989, 1990, not wanting to cause trouble, not wanting to stir up, and I wanted to heal and get on with things, and they got on with things and they grew it, and it's, I mean, this is years and years down. We founded it in 1976, and it's fully functioning, and it's one of the very best residential treatment facilities, I want to say, in the world today. And so, you know, I have nothing but praise for the efforts that are being put into it.
What is it about Ron's work that is the core of what works? Is it simply telling? Is it just the story? Is it the way you tell the story? Is it something broader still? How much you care about teenagers? How much they recognise that you see them for who they can be? How much of that can be taught?
And I suggest, while we're kind of getting warmed up today's group, that we each eat a brownie. Those look killer, Tanya. Killer. Anyway, do you think the boy thought he was honest with himself?
No. Oh, yes.
Think about it. Did he honestly think he was honest with himself?
Yeah.
Do you think he actually was, though? That seems a little bit incongruent. How can you honestly think you're honest with yourself and not be? Well, today's story is going to answer that question. And the fox said, "Good day, good day. Hey, you ready to get back on the trail?" "Yeah, yes." "What did the little man say to you last night?" "I said some crap about being honest with myself and something else about when I'm angry to, I don't know, some honest opposite stuff, I don't know."
Totally value the program, and I hope that we can keep it going. But there's no one quite like Ron to tell the story. So, yeah, he would be a hard act to follow.
I've run thousands and thousands of sessions, so I've seen thousands and thousands of people. Yeah, I love the book, and I would continue, I would carry this on as long as I possibly could, but my use-by date, I believe, is coming up.
One of the questions that I've always had is how you do Ron's work if you're not Ron. And we've wrestled with that question quite a lot, because Ron is a master storyteller, and not everybody is. So we've always wondered if how much can you teach people to be Ron or to get the same results using Ron's method?
Ron's not young anymore, right? Ron's coming to the end of his career. What I really am hopeful for, and when I talk with Ron, this is, you know, it's not something that's new to the conversation, is how to, what's the longevity? What's the sustainability? Who's going to pick this up and run with it?
I've been the only one on the side of the conference dancing out on the hillside. And last couple of years, Alex and the Rising Foundation have come onto the hillside and they're dancing with me.
Rising Foundation runs a program for young people. It's a schools-based program. Works in the high schools. We've got 6 full-time workers that work in high schools in South Auckland. And it's a leadership and life skills training program.
So I have a community that's going to be using this stuff, and I really think it's going to do great things there, and they'll do great things with it.
Well, Alex has actually developed an incredibly strong program, of which the GEMS program is a very important part. And it's spread over around 5 years, with working with the same kid over that 5-year period whilst they're at school. And it's just amazing to see the progress that these kids are making. Our end goal is to have them being positive members of their communities, with jobs, training, and a pathway for even further success.
Initially, Ron has taught the stories through 2 of our schools, and now I've been learning to teach the stories too, and I'm doing that at 1 more of our schools, and we've got 2 more we hope to do next year. This story comes from this book, Gem of the First Water, by a gentleman called Ron Phillips. He's born in California, lives here in New Zealand. So he's kind of a mentor to me. That's why that camera's going up there. It's because I'm filming this so he can watch me do this and then tell me things. And he quite liked what I did last week, so thank you for your support last week. I'm the main teacher for GEMS, so I've trained under Ron as a storyteller for our group. It's a process that takes a little while to learn, but once you know it, you've got it, and you can just go out to whichever school you need to and deliver the program. And it's been a real boost to our young people to have that.
I think the other interesting thing, I think, Alex, is that when we first started, we kind of saw the program as it being a specific program for some of our kids that were struggling more than others. But over the years now, in terms of the well-being of the kids, we've realised that it's for everybody.
So he looked down at the guy and said, "Hey, there's a tunnel here, let's get out." The guy said, "Oh, leave me alone, kid." He said, "Okay, suit yourself." And he was about to go up, but he had a social conscience. He didn't feel good about just leaving these people behind. So he turned around and he shouted out, "Hey, everybody, we can get out of here. Life's this way, come with me." And they just laughed at him. There's so many facets to what Ron's work does. So initially we were focused on anger management, impulsivity management, because obviously that's an issue that a lot of people notice when a young person's angry and impulsive and causing trouble and causing damage and those kind of things. But what we realized is that everybody has angry thoughts, everybody has impulsive thoughts. And if you can start to kind of normalize some of these emotional health issues and bring it to the whole group, that actually helps the young ones who are on the, I guess, the more extreme end to feel part of a bigger group. And at the same time, all the other ones are realizing, oh, actually, I need this as well, because it's stuff that you won't get taught anywhere else. And that's
sort of preventative, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The key, not waiting for someone to get into trouble, but try and avoid that.
All of a sudden, there was this horrendous roar. It was like the grass started to quake, and the boy just planted his power foot and was reversing, and he heard, "Follow!" And he looked back over his shoulder, and the traveler was running right at the roar.
While in high school, I also was a part of the Gem of the First Water, the journey, and it coincided with some of the principles that we learned in the Rising. So it was about making smart and good decisions. It was based around your mindset. If you're feeling negative or low, knowing how to control those kind of emotions and switch your side to feeling, actually, my situations aren't that bad. I can control the outcomes or how I feel. And so at the moment, working with Ron and stuff, we're just training to be able to retell the story
We've got an amazing bunch of people working for us, and we're very proud of the young adults that we do have running the program, because every single one of them is actually a graduate of the program.
Isaiah, best part of your life since the last time I saw you?
Celebrating my auntie's birthday on Wednesday.
Neat. Grace, best part of your week?
I'm looking forward to our day trips.
Where are you going?
Amazing Race in Auckland City.
When I'm in the group, Ron also gets myself to participate, and it's just to help the kids to be more open. We don't want like answers that are fake or fabricated, but like their true, I guess, intentions of what they want to share with us.
He brings a kind of stability and maturity with him wherever he goes. And, you know, he's the, I guess in a way, the grandfather of the program to a degree. And he'll come in and he has that effect on our young coordinators who are all in their 20s.
The big thing of my job in the Rising is that I try to target kids' minds. So if we start with their thinking and all their minds, then everything will follow, you know, their actions, their feelings and all of that. But I kind of took that from Jim, so yeah, it's been good for me as well.
You go through the hard times with integrity, knowing it's going to get better, and you're going to end up having gone through it with a strong mana, able to help other people. So there is a real positiveness. Plants don't grow in the light, they grow in the dark. People are the same way. You do your character growing during the most trying times of your life.
So looking at my team, I just wanted to choose the ones that had been benefited from the gym. So both Philetti and Grace had been through the program, gone along the gym journey and still remembered it, and it still made a difference to them.
I know in like island families, you know, everyone has a role to say. Like you're not told what you have to do. You're just kind of expected to get up and do it kind of thing. They go to church every Sunday, yeah, that's cool, but are they applying or taking in what's being said at church or whatever? So like giving our students real life lessons on life, to be honest, is like something that Pacific Island families, in my belief, aren't really taught.
They've lived in a neighborhood where all the young people were. They've grown up under the, I guess, the umbrella of the Rising Foundation. Like I said, they know the language, they know all the main themes, you know, backwards and forwards. And, you know, they live out this culture. And it's such a great example to the young people. And if you've got someone who's already done that journey and someone who's ahead of you that you can refer back to and say, that's how I want to be, it's powerful. There's so many little programs that are promoted, but this is a very comprehensive program. And it's very sophisticated. And it doesn't look like it, because like I said, you're just telling stories to kids, but the stuff that they take on board and the way it just transforms their thinking and the way it prepares them for adult life and gives them a vision of themselves when they are mature and when they are complete, and starts to get them excited about living. You know, just those simple things. If you can achieve that, then what else do you need?
If it weren't for Ron, the program wouldn't even be there. So it would be my firm desire that somebody somewhere within the health system in New Zealand has a really, really good look at what's going on here and start thinking about a proactive, preventative model for our young kids.
I guess I'm going to be taking over his role a bit as time goes by. So that's been really good to get those real deeper insights and his motivations for doing what he's doing, and just really starting to understand the program from that, I guess, higher level of emotional health thinking.
And then the frogman said, "Stay stuck, kid. I've got plenty of time." And the boy said, "But I'm not angry, though," less enthusiastically. 3 times that day, the frogman said, "Stay stuck, kid. I've got time." And the 3rd time he said, "I've got time and you're worth it."
What does the frog represent?
Good question. And I've done this a zillion times, and I don't think anybody's ever asked me what the frog represents. So I have to take a deep breath, think a second. The frogman said to the boy, "Stay stuck." And then he said, "And you're worth it." Would he have stayed there longer and longer and longer?
No.
So what does he represent to you?
Hope.
Hope. Great answer. Hope. Stay stuck, kid. I've got time. Yep. Hope would be a great answer.
Over the whole span of his career, getting a lot of young people who've been exposed to this. Plus, through his books, through his online content, people pick it up and do it with their own families, which is what the original goal was as well, is that a parent can put his tape on, back in the day, put his tape on and listen to the story and then talk about it afterwards. He's got this around the campfire moment afterwards, he calls it, when you're just discussing and talking through what's the themes of the story. And it brings up issues in the family, it brings a safe space to discuss these difficult subjects.
There's something in this about people picking it up and using it themselves, but also then it's a journey and exploration for themselves with the story and a learning for themselves about what the story means. So for everybody that becomes a learning experience. And I think there is some potential there to think about how it might be picked up by much broader groups, but also continued into the future.
It doesn't have to be him being the storyteller. And also that the training skills, and this is something that I kind of kept encouraging him, that he needed to not only just the stories themselves, but the skills he has in relating to people and relating to groups and managing the setting for this therapeutic approach, that he can communicate that as well.
There's no greater empowerment than to empower someone who then goes on to empower other people. So I thought, wow, that's just, that's the power of this program. It's sort of an ongoing process.
I've worked in just different chapters of my life, and now I'm in the chapter of working with kind of the kids I worked with back at Creative Alternatives. I'm working in alternative education classes all over South Auckland. In fact, I think I'm working in most of them. And that's just a blast. I mean, these are kids that they're square pegs that aren't fitting into traditional schools round hole. These are the kids that have been turfed out. And a lot of them have school difficulties, but man, they dig the gym journey. What would have happened if he would have listened to his fox?
You would have avoided the situation.
Totally. Who are those foxes in your life? Who are the people that care enough about you that they say, hey, don't do that, stop it. Would Dennis be one of those people?
Yes.
Would Charles be one of those people?
Yes.
So it all comes to the individual where they're prepared to change, because it was them who made those choices to do the wrong things at school, and it's them to make the choices to change that. If we give them an environment where they can feel safe, fed, and loved, then hopefully they'll change their behaviour.
We're sending them home to have better dialogue around the kitchen table. Start making your mother a cup of tea. Now, you can even do her bed sometimes, right? Just these little things that impact on a family and get your parents to change the way they are and what they say to our youth, not to mention to anyone else.
What should you do when you start heading toward trouble? Turn around and get back to where you went off the way. And how do you do that? You do it by commanding the moment, calling yourself to attention, starting to deep breathe. Sometimes I forget that I can control the moment, and then I quickly realize, hey, I'm losing a grip. But I suddenly realize, well, wow, that's taking me nowhere. I know where those thoughts are going to take me, and I'm going to be upset. I'm going to be pissed off. So I stop. I capture it, and I use mind triage to reflect my thinking to the sunny side of the street.
We're not afraid to bring the gangs into the position, because I understand the whole effect of some families are so entrenched. But when you break them down, man, they're nice guys. Okay, they're stuck in a rut. They're pretty much on the cactus. However, they're approachable. We can talk to them. They understand this place as being a place of peace, where they can come in here and there's no aggression.
I think when they get still and they stop and they have that standalone moment and they cast their thoughts to the sunny side, I think they then are able to take responsibility maybe for a behaviour that has got them in a situation where they may have had to leave school or the consequence isn't good.
I've told you a story and you'll remember the story by the images, the pictures you made in your head, and you'll be able to recall these years down the track. You're smart. You have everything you need to be successful. You've got off the way a little bit, but that's what's so wonderful about this environment. It helps you stabilize and settle down, and it's safe, and you're going to use this as a launching pad for your life.
Sometimes these kids think their destiny's been created for them and that they just have to follow that pathway. But I think going through Gem of the First Water, the kids are actually understanding that they can create it and they can be anything they want to be.
Finally learn how to behave themselves. With Te Aotea, you can make as many mistakes as you want. Just don't make the same ones over and over and over again.
It's not like 1 + 1 = 2, but it's a way of living your life that I can see them taking standalone moments, that somebody saying to you, you know, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. They're things that the teaching staff can use with the kids, and it becomes a journey you take together.
Do you know how much I enjoy coming on Tuesdays to be with you the hour? I dig it. I look forward to it.
Ron turned up, opened the door last year, and there was this man there. And I've had as a poor mother in South Auckland, people would talk about the Gem of the First Water 20 years ago going on up north, and I'd always wanted to meet him. And I opened the door and I thought, this is Ron Phillips.
I met her for the first time when I started working at Papakura Activity Center. And she had known about me and said, I've been waiting a long time to get to meet you.
Because I've had such a traumatic life, being able to sit with the kids in Gem of the First Water meant I had, I was taken, it cut through years of trauma and abuse and a whole heap of stuff because of the power of this story and Ron's mana, and no re-traumatisation involved. And I can see the kids responding in the same way, because it takes one to know one, doesn't it?
It's just so awesome to hear that I've been a help, because a lot of times the work I do, I don't get immediate feedback from. I plant a lot of seeds, and a lot of people don't, let me know that I'm having impact. And to hear Trace come out and say the things that she said just made me cry from humility. And so it's such a privilege to do what I do. I couldn't imagine a more worthwhile work than the work that I'm doing.
I've worked with at-risk kids for a long time and I've seen those programs come and go. I haven't seen too many do what this program can do. Because if you can reach the soul of a person and help them to realign that back with their heart, of course changing this, then I think we've got a winner for the human race. hey, because we kind of need it right now. And I'm not just talking about Papakura, I'm looking holistic around the world.
Lots and lots of people are really aware of my work and emulate my work. And that's a cool thing to be finishing up my career thinking, wow, I've lived a life that's had a little bit of matter to it.
Ron's been able to see tremendous results, and just how that the things that he maybe intuitively and had learned over the years, putting it all together and then refining it into hopefully tools that other people can then take and utilize to help others.
I didn't do this on my own. My wife, I've been married 51 years, And my wife, Mary, she's just been, I mean, to me, she's just as beautiful today as she was when I led her down the aisle and married her. And even before that, when she was the homecoming princess at Pepperdine University. She's been there all this time for me. She's made it possible for me to be on planet Ron. Just I couldn't have done the things that I've been able to do without you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think that's the thing, we all have to have support and we all share, in the creation. Just like these gentlemen here, yeah. And all the other people that have helped you along the way. Yeah. So it's been good to have support.
So to recap, Ron's tremendous influence has and is taking place in many parts of New Zealand and California. In a wonderful development, the Gem Journey program has now been adopted in a rural area of faraway Kenya, where Uncle Charlie is working with street kids.